It was the morning following my father's funeral that I sat alone in an old rusted Ford truck outside of our dilapidated family cabin in northern Colorado. It was the only thing Dad ever left me. That day was unpleasant. There are other factors besides the cold. Nonetheless, due to the fact that I had total paralysis within. The funeral of a guy I loved and hated equally had just taken place. Because of him, I am now unemployed. And property, in addition to conveying my apologies. But he did get out of a car that wouldn't start and had a malfunctioning radio. Whether it was out of habit or melancholy, I knelt down and unlocked the glove compartment. I was expecting the usual assortment of things like rumpled napkins, old insurance paperwork, and perhaps a flashlight. Having said that, the data I found, wait patiently, very neatly folded paper, embraced by a map marked with oil and a silver compass. It seemed like the envelope was missing my name. Shortly after 4 lines written in bold black type, regardless of who she may become. My hands shook with each extraction. The paper, which seemed to have been waiting for something, had become thin and yellowed with age. That moment has come at long last. When I took it out, I saw. Then the worst possible outcome occurred. Unwillingness prevailed. No details on the funding or procedures were provided. Someone admitted their guilt. The truth from a man whose life was dominated by melancholy and solitude, and last but not least. My mom and I weren't merely left high and dry by him. That left him with a choice, something that lived on for many years. His parting words were basically an invitation for me to perform an impossible assignment for him. No, he wasn't pleading for pardon. It marked a watershed moment. The compass suddenly became accurate. It was the incorrect north, alluding to something that has been long silenced, something that would cause me to reconsider my beliefs about faithfulness, sacrifice, and the meaning of love for a partner who is in the middle of a relationship. The burial was the final episode, at least in my perspective. Yet that was only the beginning. Hi there, my name is Emma Callahan. I used to believe that everything happened according to a predetermined schedule. Like the weathered clock in a small town kitchen, there is a delicate regularity. Durango, Colorado was my hometown when I was a youngster, and everyone there knew my dad's name, his business, and the exact year he left the family corporation. Mom tried her hardest. She kept our 2-bedroom house from crumbling, smiled through every storm, and worked additional shifts at the cafe. My dad was the only object of her praise, a tranquility, even more so than a scream it echoed. After finishing high school, all I wanted was an escape from the smell of bacon grease and the monotony of small-town conversation. My life was upended when I journeyed west to Denver, driven by an unspoken need. At the age of 22, fresh out of community college, I possessed a degree in interior design, along with a heart that was too fragile to endure this world. There I met Vivian Prescott. Fall was on the horizon. On days like this, when the slightest wind makes you need something warm to snuggle up in, I fiddled with my phone while waiting in line at a little coffee shop off 6th Avenue, trying to find affordable apartment listings that weren't plagued by peeling paint or rats. Nathan appeared before me, featuring tan embroidery, throw blanket in shades of blue. A delicate scent of cedarwood and money remained. As I was having trouble with my card, he came over, smiled, and offered to pay for my drink. He said, "I've got it," in a Colorado accent that didn't belong there. He was the epitome of friendliness, no longer disturbed. Despite his alien appearance, he exuded an easygoing chill that made me feel at ease. We had a nearly hour-long conversation under a striped patio canopy that day, while leaves fluttered about us like confetti. His identity was a mystery to me at first. He said that he was a real estate developer who was helping his family transition out of legacy assets, but I was confused by his explanation. I loved how he stared at me like if I were his entire world. Later on, I learned the truth. Real estate wasn't his only business. His family, the Prescotts, were powerful Chicago landowners, and he inherited the development projects from the East Coast to California. By the time I realized it, though, it was already too late. His charisma was starting to enchant me. Nothing Nathan did suggested that he had a privileged upbringing, replete with luxury residences and executive offices. While I was sick, he traveled 2 hours through a snowstorm to bring me soup, washed the dishes, and laughed at my jokes. He was quite complimentary of my minimalist lifestyle, gushing over my reused wood furniture and my assortment of wildflowers in antique mason jars. It took 6 months of dating before we moved in together. However, it was unintentional. His whereabouts remained a mystery following that fateful night. We managed to survive for a while. He had a habit of kissing my forehead before leaving on a business trip. As I went about my day, I would text him pictures of paint swatches and fabric samples. I was able to get his full backing when I decided to start my own design business. He said that I had an eye for spaces that felt like home, and that my talent for making something out of nothing was my strong suit. However, deep down inside, seemingly were only temporary. It seemed like I was squandering precious time from a life that was never meant for me to have. On the day I told him I was pregnant, that feeling intensified. It only took his moment of paralysis. After that, he kissed my forehead, grinned, and said, "We'll figure it out." I placed great importance on trusting him. Against all odds, I hoped he was serious. Nevertheless, what came next was the introduction. With an eye toward her, Vivian Prescott is Nathan's mother. Thanks to her invitation, our casual family brunch in Aspen became more of a royal inspection. On 5 acres stood their holiday home with a view of the mountains. An expert cook prepared the food. In a gentle manner, a violinist played. Wearing thrift shop boots with a few scuffs on the heel and a dress I discovered at a second-hand store, it was unnecessary for Vivian to say anything. That one gaze told me everything calm, collected, and bidirectional. She didn't say a word. She did not smear my reputation. That was superfluous. I heard you're expecting, she added, her voice as harsh as the wine she was drinking. I don't know how to make myself stand out. I beamed as I wrapped my finger around Nathan's. The latter was holding the reins with less tension now. Throughout the whole journey home that evening, he maintained complete silence, claiming to be just tired. A shift, nevertheless, was apparent to me. What caught everyone off guard was the rapidity and magnitude of the impending collapse. Now I see that I should have pressed the issue further. I should have demanded more information. Yet, love, it blurs your perception. Sometimes it makes you stay silent. I noticed that 3 weeks ago, after having brunch with Vivian, Nathan started sleeping with his phone face down. He did make note of the fact that the company was about to begin building on a new location outside of Chicago, and that he was busy with expansion plans, but something seemed off. As I reached out and touched his shoulder, he acted as if my hand were a heavy load. He would stare out the window for long periods of time while holding a glass of bourbon which he never drank. His unusual schedule of getting up early for work and staying late to return home was also noticeable. I tried to explain the stress by saying that he was a first-time parent, and that carrying on the family name was a burden. It was something I knew deep inside. One night, I woke up to find him sitting on the floor beside our bed, his head buried in his hands and his legs bent over. I said, "Nathan, come have a chat with me." I just said, attempting. He kept staring away from me and went on. The next morning, he brought back roses, 12 beautiful petals, on long stalks that were too big for our studio apartment, and kissed my stomach as a passionate gesture. I told you we would get through this. On the other hand, his eyes were saying goodbye. I briefly felt things were looking up when he was there the day the twins were born, slashing the ropes while holding my hand and crying at the sound of their cries. Delicate, rosy, perfect Jacob and Lily were their names. His eyes widened as he kissed my forehead, his words barely audible as he spoke them. "I will always be there to protect you," he whispered. In my heart, I wished that were still true. 10 days later, though, he strode ghostly past our front door and spoke the words that would trigger the chain reaction. "I can't handle this," assuming he meant the continual weeping and feedings by late nights. I comforted them. "It's tough now, but it will get better, I swear." Shaking his head, he expressed his disapproval. "Emma, I'm sorry, but I simply cannot stay." As I stood there, Lily's small fist encircled my necklace, and I held her close. Looking into Nathan's eyes for the first time, I didn't detect love. "Just give up," I noticed. I was so terrified that my voice cracked. "Explain yourself." His breath came in shallow gasps as he froze. "Mama was right. We aren't intended to coexist in this world." In the hopes that Lily would shield me from the approaching threat, I drew back, holding her close to my chest. "Is your departure truly your intention?" Only "I apologize" came out of his mouth. He then departed. I will not argue. I will not beg. I will not give it a second thought. The sound of the door crashing shut and the surrounding chaos were the only things I could hear. Jamil was fast asleep in his cot as I sat alone in the nursery that night. Lily cried in my arms, and all I could do was swing frantically, wanting to escape this never-ending nightmare. The days passed in a blur. No one would answer calls or react to messages. I don't know anyone to whom I could explain this. In lieu of a family, the guy who promised you forever love bestowed upon you a penthouse and a promotion. What are you to say? Aching from giving birth, my body hurt. The anguish of betrayal stabbed my heart. However, departing wasn't the worst part. After then, there was complete silence. There is a lack of conclusion and explanation. Not a word beyond that. Despite my best efforts, his secretary informed me that Nathan was traveling indefinitely. The one time I contacted him via written documents and emails, he had, in other words, left. He had completed the necessary steps to ensure his legal freedom, but his name did not appear on the lease. We were rented this apartment under my name. There I was a single mother of identical twins, dealing with a broken heart, a pile of debt, and a baby monitor, all while devoid of any joy in life. My previous associations with betrayal were yelling and banging on doors, but Nathan taught me that betrayal may also take a more subtle form. Slowly but gradually, it settles in like suffocating fog. I parted with the ring, exchanging it for food and diapers. I went days without washing my hair and spent nights worrying as a child when my twins screamed out. At the same time, I would run screaming into the hallway to get away from them. This is not because I am weak. On the other hand, I felt entirely ignored. That invisibility hurt more than anything else. Many people took note of the stroller, the diaper bag, and the spit-up marks. A woman's anguish over a man who was present, but no longer hers, went undetected by passers-by. My mind kept racing with the question, what went wrong? Was it because of what I wore, my background? Or just the fact that I always felt awkward at more stuffy occasions, like galas and fundraisers? But the truth struck me each time I looked at my defenseless newborns. It was someone else. The blame was never on me. He was frightened, vulnerable, and a little of his mother's poison had slipped into his ear. Vivian did not nurture a son but an heir, and he ultimately chose to leave a legacy above love, a kind of wrath, a sluggish, heavy fire that doesn't rumble but does burn, lies beneath melancholy. Every time I warmed a bottle, ironed a little outfit, or looked into the mirror, I felt as if I were staring at a stranger's face. However, part of the challenge was not his leaving. The realization was that he had no plans to remain. Up until the twins arrived, he simply lacked the bravery to confess. The silence and uncertainty made an everlasting impression on me. I would prefer it if he didn't come back, but retaliation wasn't required. I longed just for the strength to become an indestructible individual. I got up in the middle of the night as the rain tapped on the windows while the babies slept soundly next to me. I got back up from the floor of our living room after Nathan tossed me. Rebuilding was something I set out to do. On the first morning following the choice to stop weeping, it was unexpectedly cold. Jacob had already soaked through his onesie. Before the sun came up the floor, under me was ice, and the aroma of old formula and stale coffee filled the kitchen. I managed to hold back my tears, though. As if I were reporting for an unborn job, I threw my hair into an untidy bun, reheated some leftover coffee, and started on my laptop. Taking care of 2 newborns has strained my stability, and I was trying to balance the demands of 2 individuals at once. I felt like I could either shatter now or never. It wasn't flashy. We mostly prepped condos for speedy selling, but I loved working as a part-time interior designer for a downtown Denver boutique before I became pregnant. One of my favorite things to do was to transform stark, lifeless rooms into cozy, lived-in havens of beauty. Now that the twins were born and Nathan had left, I got in touch with them again, hoping to rejoin, if only part-time. The response was polite. Unfortunately, your post has already been filled. Emma, I hope everything works out for you. It will be a blast. Aside from being away from home and having non-negotiable hours, I had no childcare plans. A few unfinished ideas and a portfolio that was years old. I was determined, though, not to let it stop me. I combed through job postings as Jacob slept on my chest at roughly 2 a.m, and I filled out cover letters while he slept. People were dismissed swiftly and brutally. Someone with more availability is what we're seeking. We are not prioritizing your experience at this time. The worst-case scenario is that you will hear nothing at all. Every unanswered email was a constant reminder that women like me, weak, emotionally involved, and very entrenched in our duties, were invisible in this society. However, I continued, I created an Excel file with every potential freelance project I could find. I contacted local staging companies. I went over and beyond by messaging former classmates to see if they needed any design assistance. Not a single one. A night when I was really down, I snapped a photo of the nursery. A rocking chair from a thrift store, a wall painting made from leftover paint, and a set of matching cribs that was pretty much it. But there was an honesty about it, a warm, worn-in vibe. I posted the photo and a little caption on Instagram. Parenting isn't perfect, but it's also not always beautiful. It was painstakingly made in between feedings and tears. On the next day, 4 individuals began to trail behind me. Added 12 more at the end of the weekend. Not only was it unpopular, but there was no pandemic either. But it was something. Afterwards, the communication showed up. In me, hey, I love your aesthetic, texted a Boulder, Colorado mother named Cassidy to me. Are you ever hired on an as-needed basis? I'm working on a room makeover for my kid. Suddenly I froze. Paid by the hour. Someone wanted to pay me to create something fresh. I gave her an incredibly low quotation in an effort not to frighten her away. She accepted it. I used to stay up late crafting mood boards as my babies slept on each side of me. I would print them out on postage-paid envelopes. By the end of the month, I had completed 2 minor chores, rearranging the bookcases, and finding a comfortable spot to curl up with a good book. I felt that my previous self was being pieced together, with each compliment and every dime seemed like hard labor, even if the income was modest. Even with the budget barely covering baby wipes and formula, I knew I couldn't climb this endlessly. The day seemed too short. Thus, I made a note of something when I folded clothes one day. All those little clothes, either they were incredibly expensive or the quality was so low that they were uncomfortable to wear. The onesie that Lily was wearing, which I had hand-sewn from a scrap of organic cotton donated to me by a neighbor, was a perfect fit, adorable, and most importantly, she seemed very comfortable in it. All of a sudden, something was ignited. I had a brilliant idea. What if I could create stylish, ultra-soft baby clothing that were affordable? While I didn't have a background in fashion or a job in the business, I was good with my hands and knew my way around fabric color theory, proportion, and design. Elkins, a former seamstress who adored smokes and classic westerns with her cat, let me use her filthy sewing machine for the weekend. She taught me the ropes, thread tension, buttonholes are all the rage, sir your tip. To begin with the most important aspect, delicate pink ruffled bloomers, petite pants, and a very simple onesie. Lily and Jacob were draping themselves across improvised blankets in each image, and I managed to snap each one while smiling through drool and mayhem. After that, I started publishing. It was my idea to call the business Tiny Roots. The name came from a phrase I wrote in my journal a few weeks ago. You need to take good care of them, and they will grow strong. Few likes, no comment. The first postings failed. However, I continued. Every night after lullabies and bottles, I submitted product lists and stitched while I slept. Almost every mother blogger I contacted ignored me when I contacted them. The mother unfriended me because I offered free samples, while another person told me it's adorable, but my followers exclusively purchase designer. A little moment passed and I nearly surrendered. A spool of thread and my tears helped me say, maybe I'm just not enough, as I sat in the kitchen at 1 a.m. But something happened the following morning. One of my rompers ended up becoming viral, featuring Cassidy's daughter. Cassidy is the mother who commissioned me to redesign her bedroom. Moms helping moms, she e-crimed. Tiny Roots is unrivaled. My order volume increased tenfold in under 24 hours. I was compelled to start a waiting list within the initial week. I found it hard to believe. Others were tagging me and contacting me through messaging. For that, I am eternally thankful. A mother from Texas commented, I cried when I opened the package, next to a photo of her baby in a soft green onesie that I had crocheted, describing how the item felt like a hug from a loved one. I had the same impression as her, meticulously designed, through and through, no aspect overlooked. I wasn't just building a business, that's why. Restoring myself was my goal. Tiny Roots was more than simply a baby clothes store. You should start anew when everyone else says it's over. It was about choosing to stand tall when everyone else stooped. With each sequence, I discovered something new. With each 5-star rating, I felt validated in my worth. In their handcrafted matching sets, Lily and Jacob were always visible to me while they played together because just getting by has become an ordeal. A transformation was taking place within me. A stronger individual, someone that nobody could ever hope to fully evade. After finally understanding, feeling hopeless at last, the lesson is about self-sacrifice. The first wave of orders was overwhelming, but I felt exhilarated instead of terrified when I woke up after months of not getting any sleep. My days were still filled with feedings, changing diapers, and chasing after my newly crawling twins. But at least I had a brainwave. The stage name Tiny Roots has evolved into something far more substantial. Spools of thread were tucked beneath the sofa fabric rolls were lined up along the wall, and once Lily tried to swallow a safety pin that I had dropped near her playmat. My living room also served as my office shipping station sewing area, and on rare occasions sleep zone when I was feeling especially lethargic. It was exhausting for me all the time, but I was building something. But nevertheless, there was a rapid fading of the shiny luster. My post-interaction waned after the first spike of interest. A few moms who filled out the survey expressed enthusiasm in the idea, but they felt the price was a bit much for handmade. I went entire weeks without selling anything. On occasion, I would stay up all night sewing for a last-minute order, only to have the customer cancel the next day. The color wasn't what she expected. That led one customer to want a refund, while another claimed that I had plagiarized a design from an obscure but famous company. Still, nothing negative transpired. I got an email from a boutique after I pitched to them. While your story is moving, our consumers are more likely to choose well-established companies. Make the most of it. A simple no wasn't enough. Ours served as a stark reminder that women who choose to start again are rarely celebrated in our environment. Our infrastructure isn't designed to handle a lot of different brands and bottles. Some nice polishing is in need, the perfect amount. Proven. To top it all off, I was also none of those things. To me, it all started to look suspicious. Were my lofty goals for running a business out of my 700-square-foot apartment with 2 small children too much to handle? Did I really believe that Made with Love would make a difference when I could get the same product built in a factory on Amazon for half the price? The numbers were right on. Money was becoming tight. My account was due for rent. Maybe this was all a mistake. I sat in the dark holding Jacob close and stated that one night, after getting my energy company's last notice, but the universe has a way of leading you if you ask it nicely, in the midst of your darkest hours, that night Cassidy contacted me. She was the first mother to ever believe in me. How are you doing? It appears that your website has been rather inactive as of late. I was embarrassed that it took so long for me to respond, and I nearly quit up, but I held on to my pride too much. I only put, "I believe I'm done," thereafter. Quickly, she replied, "No, I don't think so." A subsequent communication followed. You need help drawing attention to yourself, although you do have certain attributes that are distinctly yours. It was her argument. It seemed like my website was a 2011 blog because my pictures were fuzzy from using a damaged phone. The only thing I had was my name in cursive and no logo. In addition to demonstrating the value of my job, I had to explain its significance to everyone. My pride was getting in the way of my request for help. A local photographer called Jules graciously offered to take a few pictures in return for some baby clothes. Jules was quite busy with her growing business and the birth of her daughter. Jules took a picture of Jacob and Lily as they ran barefoot in the grass, laughing during the park's golden hour. Lily and Jacob were dressed similarly, so they were both quite comfortable. Jules reached for dandelions to prop up their portrait. I was astounded by the images. After a few days, she sent me an email with the whole gallery, and I started to cry as I looked at each photo. The main reason is because it was my first viewing. Love, that is all. Here we are aiming. The very center. There were other issues than clothing. Regarding the topic of memory, it's comforting to surround a child with lovely things and make them feel protected when times are rough. The entire website was redecorated by me. Simplified layout, rebranding. The revised bio read, "Each item is meticulously handmade with love and care by a lady whose life was meticulously rebuilt, stitch by stitch. The firm is named after her." Regarding grief and perseverance, I also started writing blog entries about it. I stayed up all night crafting pieces about juggling family and work responsibilities. Thank you so much. When asked about the times I felt like quitting up, I was quite honest. I talked about the times I grieved on the kitchen floor, the times I had to serve my kids cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row because of money problems. Moreover, being forthright, some emotion was evoked. Mothers started messaging me for reasons other than just making a purchase, or to thank me not long after that for being genuine in order to convey the feelings they couldn't put into words. The orders began rolling in again, but this time it wasn't because of the products I was selling. It was because of the relationships I was establishing. After then, 2 orders were placed, followed by 10, and finally 20. Eventually, I was unable to keep up. My part-time sewing assistant is Maria, a former teacher who I enlisted because of her steady hand and mild laugh. On Fridays, she would send finished goods across town in a brown paper bag. Cassidy assisted me in developing a marketing strategy that included scheduled blogging email campaigns and even local Mommy and Me events where I could showcase my designs. Nothing flashy about it. I worked all night and into the morning, spending a pretty penny on coffee. The result, however, was favorable. On parenting forums, the name Tiny Roots began to circulate. In a highlight movie featuring the romper she bought for her kid, Tasha Marie, a small Instagram celebrity, included my story. My website went down the next day due to the influx of visitors. Not only did I receive 2 messages regarding potential wholesale prospects, but I also acquired 63 new clients and 400 new followers. As Lily and Jacob slept soundly in their bed, I sat transfixed at my kitchen table, staring at the TV. "You did it," I whispered something. I am not trying to brag. There's no need to boast. In any case, I did this to make sure I didn't forget. He wasn't Nathan. Absolutely not Vinny. Everyone else who left or doubted me stayed. Indeed, I am. That would be Emma Callahan. Taking care of everything on my own is no picnic. Small house, dreams in the sky. Also tremendous restraint, given that things really are. Success is not attainable with a silk purse. Spit sweat and repurposed optimism cover it. When things don't go your way, keep trying. A trial run. If you're the kind to stitch till the lights go out, tell me about it. After successfully managing a thriving business, taking care of 2 energetic toddlers, and surviving most days without crying in the bathroom, life threw me another curveball just when I thought I had it figured out. But I was whole this time. Consequently, I matured. It all started with a single letter. On a trip to see my mom, I found it in a dusty box labeled Emma High School. I was on the hunt for a high school graduation photo to use for a Mother's Day post, and to my surprise, I found something that would reknot a connection I thought had long since been severed. The narrow edge-yellowing envelope had unfamiliar handwriting. The return address, though, was Las Vegas, Nevada, and a flutter ran through my heart. I was given it by my father. He wasn't Nathan, and someone who is technically my father. His departure occurred when I was 5 years old. I had mistakenly thought that the one my mom didn't talk about didn't care if I stayed or not. I debated whether or not to open the envelope for a long time. With a postmark from 7 years ago, it held a letter. He took great pride in the fact that he had been sober for over a decade. He mentioned that he had made several attempts to contact my mom, but she had never returned his calls. He wasn't angry with her for not giving him another chance, but he did want I could hear the complete story someday. In addition, he gave me his number, and I'd like to apologize. While comparing the lady who had risen from the ashes to the abandoned newborn, I couldn't sleep that night because my thoughts were racing with a mix of anger and astonishment. What was his present desire? What did I want most of all, though? Has it ended? Have I been pardoned? Unless what I was seeking was only the final piece of my identity. Before dialing the number, I paused. I carried the letter about in my purse like a precious secret. Read it again as you slept. The folds gradually parted after a few foldings. Keep reading even while the lights are blinking red. Calling the number the next day was my plan. I spoke in an unusual manner, and my hand shook. A salutation. I cried out my name, and then I had a little weep. His voice was harsher and rougher than what I remembered. The room was silent. He asked if we could meet up, and probably would have understood a no if I had told him no. But a stubborn little part of me still answered yes. I gathered the kids in the car and drove to Nevada, aimlessly not knowing what to expect. He lived in a small house on the outskirts of town where the grass was lovely and a wind chime tinkled in the dry desert air at the end of the porch. His eyes belonged to me, the same shade of blue, coupled by the same sparkle of shame, but I barely recognized him when he opened the door. His effort at a hug was completely absent from my perception. He chose not to speak. He instead took me to the kitchen where he made 2 cups of coffee and asked whether I wanted the truth given to me. Afterwards, I proceeded to do it. I sat there and listened intently. In regards to the letters he never wrote the one time he stayed outside my elementary school to watch me from a distance, and to tales of addiction, regret, and rehabilitation, as well as shelter sleeping. There was no relief from the pain, but it broadened its scope. Despite his lack of self-care skills, he was not evil. Rather, he was a broken individual. That, strangely enough, also made breathing easier. Forgiveness and Hallmark hugs did not happen overnight. There was a lag before we were near. We started off small, though. The twins' birthday cards, the infrequent monthly phone calls, and the second-hand tricycle he sent with the words, "I hope they like blue." I felt an unexpected emotion slowly rising to the surface. "Take it easy." That tranquility served as my foundation, regardless of what happened thereafter. I was about to leave when I heard the sound of another door slamming shut, just as the first one had quietly opened. It came to mind suddenly. My inbox was flooded with an email from a law firm in New York. Notice of trademark infringement appears in the subject line of the communication. As I clicked it, my heart was already pounding. Their new nature-rooted line was introduced by the larger newborn clothing company, Tiny Buds, and I was accused of brand impersonation and aesthetic duplication in the mail. They implied that my Tiny Roots brand was trying to pass itself off as someone else's. Disturbed me to no end. It was clear to them who I was, but I was completely unaware of their identities. For the next 12 hours, I was completely out of it, reading the whole cease and desist letter as I evaluate their works in comparison to my own. I looked into the company's founders on Google and found that they were funded by a well-known venture capital firm. They had 500,000 Instagram followers. Their business model included star endorsements, a warehouse, and a public relations team. Maria and I shared a few possessions, including a sticky pedal sewing machine, a $12.99 domain name, and a few other items. But there is something more I possess that they did not: a record. I posted a long, very poignant message to Instagram. I was forthright instead of irate. I told my followers about the letter, the charge, and my fear of losing what I had fought for. I summed it up like this: I started Tiny Roots at my kitchen table with 2 babies, no sleep, and a lot of love. Nobody did what I did. I always managed to get by without what I needed. And I'm not leaving either. A massive number of individuals got in touch. A large number of people shared the message. Those in authoritative positions who had avoided me before suddenly surrounded me. Stories of mothers who had been victims of brand bullying were shared. Hashtags such as "Samna Stand with Tiny Roots" and "Moms Supporting Moms" started trending inside my tiny online sanctuary. Then came the email that changed everything. I received a call from an individual representing a group that helps women-owned businesses with legal matters. They extended an offer of representation to me instead of payment. The 3 months that followed were the worst. In my search for proof that Tiny Roots had been made before Tiny Buds, I perused old emails, sketchbooks, and photos with timestamps. Even though I wasn't scared of failure, there were evenings when I sobbed myself to sleep because I just couldn't believe I had to fight for my own life. Still, I didn't give up. They chose to drop the case in the end. Apologies are unnecessary, stays quiet. Furthermore, no legal action will be taken. It met my expectations. The victory wasn't only justified. Regarding the individual, it was proof that my viewpoint mattered, that my actions have value. No matter how hard the world tried to cram me in, I still had the right to my own personal space. Once things had subsided, Lily and Jacob and I went for a long walk around the neighborhood. We passed by a peaceful park, a neat bookstore, and a mural that said, "Grow where you're planted." Then it dawned on me. I had triumphed against more than just betrayal, abandonment, and defeat. I had moored myself so securely that I stayed put even when the storm came. I had shifted roles in my story at this point. The start of something far bigger was imminent. It started off like most ordinary days with some quiet strife. After Lily spilled a bowl of Cheerios, they were all over the floor. Jacob would remain motionless in the absence of pants. I was on the phone with my supplier while simultaneously cleaning the inside of my laptop bag. On a normal Tuesday, a mompreneur might As I lifted the twins into their car seats, my phone began to ring, alerting me that I needed to get ready for a local artisan fair where my Tiny Roots pop-up booth would be set up. An enigmatic individual. Like clockwork, I would ignore it. I did not have time for surveys and unsolicited calls. However, I felt forced to reply. On the other side, nobody spoke. After then, a voice familiar, weary, uncertain. "Darling, it's Nathan." The abrupt flip of my stomach forced me to reach for the edge of the counter in order to regain my balance. The last time I heard that voice was more than 4 years ago. The fact that he vanished without a trace when he departed our apartment has made it impossible for me to live normally. I kept my mouth shut. He continued, but his voice was quiet. "Its term is little ones, and I've spotted you. Virtually speaking, what follows is an interview. You've done an amazing thing." I kept quiet because my mind was racing with memories of the terror attacks, panic attacks, and dead silence he left behind. Nathan seemed to be at a loss for words as he cleared his throat, clearly attempting to establish his place in a conversation he had no right to initiate. Even though I know that nobody is interested in hearing from me, I was still hoping that maybe we may talk. Remains uncertain at this time. According to him, he would be in Denver this week. I am open to meeting you wherever you are, just for the purpose of having a discussion. I am not anticipating anything. Oh, I beg you. Taking a deep breath, I stopped. 1 hour, I said beneath my breath. Space outside, just your average day. A tranquil coffee shop on the outskirts of town was the setting for our gathering. It was I who arrived here first. My heart was racing, not from excitement, but from tension. That wasn't why I still loved him. When he entered the room, I had no idea which version of him he would bring. At that moment, he emerged, very small. Regarding appearance, no years later, Nathan remained Nathan, with the same towering figure and smartly dressed features that had captivated me. Still, he had lost some of his former self. His eyes were deeper and darker. Even his smile was unsure. The equivalent of a man who spent his whole life perfecting an apology he was never really able to say. When he spoke my name, Emma, it sounded almost painfully laborious. Nod was my reaction. "Nathan," I said. Seated across from one another, we sat down. Time choices and pain have kept us apart. He moved at a measured pace. "It wouldn't bother me if you reached out sooner. I was worried you would hate me if I did." Putting my hands over my head, I said, "That's not the reason I haven't disliked you." The man blinked in confusion. I approached closer. Hatred demands work. Nothing remained once I finished. Along with money, a broken heart, and infants, I had to rebuild a new life. Hating you would have cost me a big penny. He dove in headfirst, swallowing heavily. He brought up the fact that he had watched the business show where you were interviewed. You were happy, confident, like someone I shouldn't have been around. "You're right," I said unequivocally. Frustrated, he said, "That was my due." Nathan spoke a surprising remark after becoming silent. "My decision to depart was not prompted by a loss of love for you." Then for what purpose did I look away? He seemed to be looking for answers in his coffee cup as he focused on the table and stroked its edge. It was terrifying. Everything is going to be lost on me. I fear disappointing those who matter most to me. When compared to the kids and you, I feel like a complete failure. According to my mom, at this point I had had enough and cut him off. Giving her that much praise is unfair. Your exit was sudden. You had the last say. Singing softly off-key, fully self-sufficient. You vanished into thin air. He lifted his head to look up with an air of superiority. Yeah, I know. As I spoke the words, I begged you. My voice quivered for the very first time. I begged you to stay. Just so you know, Nathan, I was holding your children close to me. You just let them down. I didn't simply vanish. Tears welled up in his eyes. It seems the event has been occupying my thoughts continuously since then. As for me, I doubt it. The amount of times I've stayed up viewing old film of us the newborn twins is equal to the number of times I've pondered calling someone, but I've always talked myself out of it. I have, he murmured under his palm. I have missed their first steps and words. I said you missed everything in an honest rather than harsh tone. Nathan took an envelope out of his coat pocket. I don't think you'll ever forgive me, and I want nothing more than to cut ties with you. All I did was send letters to Lily and Jacob, but I won't go into detail. I wish I could have stayed to tell them the truth. I took the envelope without opening it. Calmly we sat. My perception of Nathan as the man who left me behind eventually faded. Still, I felt terrible guilt for the man who couldn't handle the burden I was carrying. Those trying times were simply not meant for that individual who valued their own safety before the love of another. I don't hate you was the only thing that came out of my mouth as I mumbled it. I am not dependent on you. The moment was not right, never will be. Nathan nodded slowly, his shoulders dropping. Well, I figured it out. You should have known better. It was sufficient. That is my position, one last time. He got to his feet, backwards and forth, between embracing me, shaking my hand, or just disappearing again. Because of me, he thought it was easy. I stared into his eyes silently. My children have rich and diverse lives, full and varied lives. You have been removed from that story. Stop trying to modify it. Everything in that part is complete. There is no second opportunity. You were gone for a time. He acknowledged with a nod, silently, warm regards. After that, he got up and left. No begging for mercy, no grandiose display. I am not able to make any promises. He left in the same manner as before. However, on this occasion, I remained in one place. I did not anticipate that the door would be reopened. The outcome was satisfactory to me. He had already moved on from this story, that's why. That was instead of getting away from everything, I was coming out on top, stronger, wiser, and more whole than before. During the weeks after Nathan made his entrance, an unusual quietness descended. The suffocating quiet of the nights after his departure from my life all those years ago was not there. Unlike anything else, the calm that follows a storm is like hearing your own breath for the first time, the kind that makes space for clarity. Assuming he will soon knock, I may be secretly waiting for an apology that will finally heal my shattered heart. I didn't even realize how strongly I clung to that one door, but talking to him face to face and witnessing the sincerity in his eyes, it now made sense to me. He wasn't necessary for me to feel whole. Within myself, I had already closed the chapter, quietly, every now and again, little by little. It was liberating at last. It was a great time for Little Roots. I had partnered with a local printing and packaging company to help with large orders, but now Maria was working full-time, just as I needed when I was a parent. Angela and Brooke were looking for flexible work, so we hired them as part-time seamstresses. The brand's steady growth followed its survival of the legal scare. Moving out of my apartment, I found a lovely craftsman-style house in the heart of Golden, Colorado. Inside, I had the kitchen island of my dreams, a fenced-in garden and a spare room that I turned into a bright and airy design studio. Tantrums continue. There will be early mornings and late evenings. The couch cushions still had Cheerios, but now I could put my worries aside. Area in which to live. As I poured my second cup of coffee into my inbox one morning, the subject line of the email almost made me put down my coffee. Consideration, National Retail Collaboration, Meeting Request. It was submitted by a buyer from Sprout Plus Co., a prominent national brand of eco-friendly children's lifestyle items. Read the blog posts, notice the social media updates. They had seen my story. They were hoping to feature Tiny Roots in their Mothers Who Build campaign, which honors women who have started and grown successful businesses from scratch. It wasn't only about providing room for displays in stores. They aimed for a partnership. Make a one-of-a-kind set. My name is on it. I stared at the TV in disbelief as my entire body trembled. I read the email 3 times before getting in touch with Cassidy, who had evolved into more than just a friend. They were like family to her. Right when I was going to say anything, she took up the phone. From across the room, Lily quickly sprinted over to ask, "Are we winning something?" following her telephonic outburst. "Yes, darling, I informed you. Mama has won something." In the subsequent months, a tornado tore across the area. I flew to New York for meetings, stayed in a hotel for the first time since before the twins were born, and was greeted with a mixture of thanks and adoration by the people seated in the conference rooms. We started working together in the spring. Sprout Plus Co. and Little Roots have teamed up on this. Super soft organic cotton muted earth tones and hand-drawn graphics based on concepts I'd scribbled on the back of old energy bills. Within 48 hours, they disappeared. A deluge of emails arrived. Many mothers have sent me heartfelt messages of congratulations and images of their children dressed in my designs. Your story inspired me to strike out on my own after escaping a poisonous marriage, said one commenter. Not only do I wear your garments, but I also carry your bravery. I kept that message close to my heart. It dawned on me that the clothes had never been the main attraction. Narratives have perpetually occupied the forefront. Regarding a woman who swore she would never let rejection to define her, featuring a mother who shot to fame after taking up the unusual practice of feeding her twins after midnight. Regarding a person who did more than just make it through, they thrived. As I stood by the window one night, watching the wind whisper through the trees, I recalled putting Lily and Jacob to bed. Everything that had slipped my thoughts fell back into its proper place. A connection that I thought would endure forever. I was at peace till the day he left. My true self when I doubted my ability to achieve success on my own. On the other hand, I thought of all the advantages I had gotten. This house is a hive of activity. I took full responsibility of my future and worked my way up the corporate ladder. Remembering those initial days, I could clearly see myself trembling over a needle sitting on the floor in fear while babies sobbed and the rent remained due. When does this end? As a woman who had been broken but had made herself whole again, I stood here. It didn't matter whether someone else stayed. What mattered was who had loved lost and understood her worth, who had discovered her purpose after escaping her pain. It wasn't required Nathan's blessing. Getting Vivian's okay isn't necessary. I could see that I had achieved my goal. The main reason being that it was directly facing me, whenever my little ones make a sound of delight. Regarding the orders that are being received through my website, While staring into the mirror, I caught sight of a woman I thought was permanently gone. Returning, I went, "Yes, this is unique, a substantial improvement. Enhanced visibility, more reasonable, and a touch more of who I am." I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. What I have accomplished with the brand I built in terms of sales and publicity is insufficient. But of the unseen victories that remain secret, those days I hung in there. There were mornings when I had to drag myself out of bed in spite of how much pain I was in. On those nights, I opt for love instead of bitterness, serenity instead of anger, and courage instead of fear. That is when I realized my full potential. I was also aware I was ready for whatever that came after that. Because of this, I had gone through hell and back, and come out shining. When a hero returns victorious, the crowd goes wild. A happy family in matching costumes, a new house, and a successful brand are all that they perceive. They dismiss it as a highlight reel, but the most crucial parts are overlooked. They couldn't possibly comprehend my desperation as I rationed the remaining can of soup to my infants, all the while crossing my fingers that the funds for a customized romper would magically disappear so I could buy diapers the next day. I stared at myself in the mirror several times and worried whether I was hurting my children by setting an impossible standard for myself, but no one noticed. They could never comprehend why I would sleep on the floor of their room, since the sound from my own bed was too loud for them to endure. What I've learned is the most crucial thing. Courage and fear are not incompatible feelings. Some people aren't meant to be, even if you find yourself missing them. While aiming for the future, it is conceivable to grieve the past. I held on to my erroneous notion of strength for a long time, but now I see strength comes after brokenness. It's when the thunderous applause dies down and the silence reigns. As soon as you step out of the bathroom, immediately after you answer to the latest rejection email, when you hold on to your kids and say, "We're okay," even if you're not sure it's true while you're crying, you can see the fruits of that kind of strength, an unshakable base. I used to think that being successful required always surprise other people. Turns out Nathan was wrong. This is wrong, Vivian. These are the businesses that turned me down, stores that didn't think we were a good fit. My mental state, however, connected me to the very people who had aimed to bring me down in the past. Making it big isn't about exacting revenge. Harmony is achievement. My success will be complete when I am able to greet each day with the conviction that I am sufficient just as I am. The ability to quietly gather food supplies for my children is a tremendous comfort. I usually don't start a new line when I'm stuck, but rather when I'm thrilled about something. Now I can finally get some rest without experiencing that nagging knot in my stomach. My final point is, there I sat fearlessly facing the guy who left me when I was down and out. No wrath, stay free from discomfort. Take a big breath, please. I have released the part of myself that yearned to be chosen, and that is the only reason. I have chosen myself. I want you to know this if you're here and it feels like you're going downhill, like nobody is able to assist you and that opportunities are slipping away. Time is not an issue for you. You are not severely injured. In terms of size, you are perfect. I made a brand out of random fabric remnants and pure desperation. When I did this, rejection turned into redirection. These days, being a mother is more of a guide than a hindrance. Beginning does not require perfect circumstances. It only takes the guts to believe you're worthy of more to make it happen. You can't let yourself be defined by a single setback. They're inevitable. Master the art of climbing with its assistance. Use it to improve your pronunciation. Use it to spark your enthusiasm. Also, when you get up again, which you will, don't look back to see who's cheering. Look in the mirror. Because of that woman, right? That one who didn't give up. Your children will grow up knowing that she embodies strength. She is the reason your story will matter. She is proof that you were never weak. I only need to be patient and wait for the right chance to become unstoppable.